Hi there, I'm going to do a review for Bladerunner. This movie came out in 1982, directed by Ridley Scott, and stars Harrison Ford, and to some extent Sean Young. This movie is kind of like those one of those oddball movies made in the early 80s, well, mid 80s and 80s in general, because it doesn't have a straightforward storyline or plotting. It's basically a sci-fi movie that's sort of set up to be. Um, I mean, it could theoretically be set in space, but it's not. It's very much set in terrestrial world of what is it, 2019 Los Angeles, and the entire joke of the movie is that like you got they got something going on off planet, what they call replicants. Replicants work for humanity, or replicants are they have something called they got these robots that look like humans, and basically they're supposed to sort of work for us in terms of mining and more dangerous work, but nonetheless they have this problem where some of them had been determined to be defective and they were supposed to eliminate them. They also have a lifespan. A couple of them made it back to Earth, and of course now you got a Blade Runner has got to go and find these things and determine, get to destroy them. You're not supposed to have any of these things. They went rogue. That was the problem. They went rogue, and now they're in potential danger to anybody who knows anything about the program. More or less, this is like a high little point for a movie making at the time. It wasn't a movie that did particularly well in the box office. I'm not sure why. I think it's got something to do with the fact that, like most movies of this type, it's kind of like an artsy, almost an artsy film because it doesn't follow any traditional, normal concept. And I think that's one of the problems of it is that it doesn't have a normal plot. It's not easy to follow. It's got a very futuristic aesthetic to it. It's got some really spectacular shots. Unfortunately, it just didn't get to play it. It didn't make the same mark as, say, Star Wars or a lot of other movies. Nonetheless, it became a sort of a cult classic over the years because there's multiple different cuts. There's the cut that came out in the theaters, and then they kind of went back and recut it over the years. I guess there's like about 10 different cuts of this movie. I think the preferred version is like the director's cut or something like that. But nonetheless, you got Harrison Ford playing Deckard, and Deckard is a Blade Runner. He's more or less going after these replicants who are supposed to be more or less uh, they're supposed to be off-planet workers, but that was the problem. There are many different variants of these robots. They don't follow one style, and nonetheless, the creator of them was kind of found out that he wasn't really that. He found out that his work wasn't quite working out the way he wanted to, so they've had to do multiple different generations of these things. They've tried to get them done proper so that they won't be a harm to humanity, but nonetheless, it still happens. It's still a problem. Um, it's one of those films where you kind of just got to take it with what it is. It's a once-off storytelling. There's some hint that Deckard himself is actually a replicant. It's not entirely clear. Don't really know. It doesn't really get straight to the point on that. It does have certain small hints with things like unicorns, and it's a rather ironic movie for that. That it doesn't have a straightforward narrative on exactly what anybody is or what they do. Nonetheless, Rutger Hauer is the head replicant for going down to Earth and trying to find their creator so they want to be fixed. And the problem with almost all these things is that they're twitchy, they're like psychotic. They're much more careful than normal people, than actual regular bad characters. But the problem they have is that they're just not trustworthy. They can turn on you. They're they can be quite dangerous. And this is the big concern about the police, is that you have to get rid of these things. Um, yeah, basically they are looking for an answer from their creator, because actually one of the things is the plot is that they have a very short lifespan. They only have a lifespan of like a few years, and then they're basically toast. They weren't meant to be permanent residents. They weren't meant to have 70 years. They were meant to be literally 3 years or 2 years or something like that. It doesn't really matter. They're very, very short lifespan. Meant to be once-off production volume, so that if any mistakes are found, they can easily be eliminated. They do follow all the sort of rules of humanity, though, because they do have an understanding of right and wrong. It's very clear about that they have an understanding of right and wrong. But that's really where the problem starts, is that they don't have a clear enough understanding of right and wrong. They're very not very particular about it. Like the first guy that one of them meets, he offs almost right away. That's the problem, is that it's all about the fact that they're very unstable creatures. Nonetheless, Deckard has to go around all over the place to find these guys. And he runs into numerous weird characters along the way. Like Blade Runner. Blade Runner was a fairly early prototype of, punk noir movies. I don't think there was a movie like this. This was the weird part about this movie, is it does look a little bit ahead of its time, because if you look at movies that were made any earlier in time, there's a definite feel of future filmmaking here. Like, that was the thing about this Blade Runner, is that it's for 1982, it looks sort of weirdly transcendent, because if you were around for those movies of the late 70s, early 80s, this was a unique film. I think that was true, though, of a lot of movies. There was a lot of movies that came out in the late 70s, early 80s that kind of set the stage for the 80s. Like Indiana Jones does not feel like a particularly, like, go back to the 70s, everything's an art film, and they definitely do not feel the same as modern movies. Movies that came before them. The 70s was a time of really dry movie making, and movies like this feel like a totally different kind of material than that. And nonetheless, some rather escaping shots, because of course it's set a little bit in the future, where we're supposed to have like flying cars and things like that. And of course, Los Angeles is like this futurified city. I'm not sure why they show so many skyscrapers in there. I don't think it would have had. It's not. It doesn't even have that many now, let alone in the future. I think the joke is that, like, they kind of figured that because it's a city that's set in the future, it's going to have more tall buildings, because they beat the height restrictions of the earthquakes. I think that this is one of those movies that tends to forget that Los Angeles has earthquakes. Certainly, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of they show a bit of industry in this movie. This movie's got just an unusual feel to it, because it's very much a movie of its time. It very much is. It's very hard to define it, because it's so strange to look at. I think in comparison to what had been coming out before it, this felt like an oddball movie. I think that was one of the reasons why it didn't do particularly well, is because it's such an oddball movie to look at, and the feel of it's so different. It does not. It does give a premonition of a future where there's a whole bunch of people of Japanese and Chinese descent, East Asian descent, basically, in Los Angeles. Some of it's accurate, some of it's not. It's got a weird tangent where, of course, you still order noodles at the food marts. But yeah, not too bad of a movie. Certainly, I think the director's cut is better than the theatrical cut. I think that was the problem with it, is that the theatrical cut is missing too much stuff that's key plot pointing, and it doesn't have the ending where Rutger Hauer gets into a fight with Harrison Ford. And more or less, yeah, this is the film where Sean Young kind of got her start off of. Not that she's a particularly huge career, she's apparently got problems. So she's got limits on what she can actually do. But yeah, nonetheless, this is a very a punk rock future. I'm not even sure how to describe it, what it's trying to display and determine. But yeah, fairly decent film set in the future. Um, yeah, Blade Runner going after replicants. There's that.